what happened with Maduro cannot be isolated from what happened under Hugo Chavez. Maduro was a continuation of Chavez's policies. To create a false dichotomy, a little bit like what happened among some segments of the European left with sort of the good Lenin, bad Stalin idea, the actual framework of governance that Maduro has been able to bend to his will, to be able to stage phony elections like the one that's going to be held this weekend, to be able to create a fake parliament when he loses the parliament of the country, to be able to dictate what happens and who is an enemy of the state, being able to make sure that all of the opposition gets exiled. Those powers were hollowed out, not under Maduro, but under Hugo Chavez Frias.
Right, but it wasn't under Chavez that the Constitution was changed.
Well, it was changed under Chavez early on. But that was a very different process.
It wasn't just done on Chavez. It was done through a process of involvement of nationwide where people participated in an open and democratic way, not the way that it was done last year under Maduro, where it was pushed through in a very illegitimate fashion. And then those were actually fake elections where there was fraud. The numbers were inflated at the end. And ever since then, I mean, the electoral process in Venezuela, unfortunately, has now been compromised because Venezuela did have a very solid electoral process that was quite transparent. I mean, I voted there over 8 times as a Venezuelan citizen when I lived there, and it was much better than the United States. But ever since last year, when they inflated the numbers, they did away with the audits. There was no opposition to provide any kind of checks and balances in the process. And then again, in last, I think it was December, when they had regional elections, there was absolute fraud that took place in one of the states, and it just was left that way. So obviously, this time around, people would feel as though the elections are fake or could be fraudulent. And at this stage, since there's been no change in the Electoral Council composition, there's been no other guarantees put in place. There's outright vote buying. There's voter intimidation. There are now, ID cards that the government uses to provide benefits to Venezuelan citizens that now they're saying they have to, check in with when they vote, so they make sure that they're voting to get their benefits. I mean, those types of things did not exist under Chavez. And in fact, he was adamant that he was against that kind of culture. And he did away with a lot of corrupt practices that, unfortunately, I mean, I would agree that there were tendencies that were authoritarian that opened the door to what we have today. But the type of behavior that Maduro engages in with this type of authoritarianism, intimidation tactics, and absolute erosion of the democratic institutions has been his doing and those of a corrupt circle that have kept him in power, and of a poor populace that is now, has lost all of the legitimacy and the power and the participatory practices that they had gained under Chavez. Much of that is now gone. And what we have are people who are desperate to just maintain whatever benefits they possibly have so that they can get by each day. And if that means, continuing with this government, that's what people will do, because as of now, the opposition is not offering any kind of solid alternative.